Hello, everyone, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian. I am here with, this is BadgerPod Gamergate number 4. I'm kind of like bringing back the old BadgerPod Gamergate that we used to do back in 2014, 2015, and talking to various people that are really active in that space. So, I am joined by Allison, as you can see. I dropped her in there. And
hello, everyone.
Our special
I'm
guest
back.
is, yes, she is back. And our special guest is Savvy. And
Hi.
Hi, Savvy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation.
Oh, really? Well, man, that's great. Me too. So, Savvy, you are basically you got involved with this whole Sweet Baby Inc., detected business. And you had a really unique, information you're bringing forward. And this is the reason why I was drawn to wanting to have you on our show, because when this whole thing happened, a lot of people were talking about it on a kind of, and I'm not saying this to be disparaging, to be clear, but kind of on a surface level, right? Like where it's like, they're getting into the weeds about specific games that were changed and specific things that people said and how they felt about that stuff. But I was always of the mind that there is something deeper happening that people are not talking about. And you have brought some of that stuff to light. And so I guess before we get into that, and I do want to get into that, before we get into that though, what is it that you do and how did you get sucked into this thing?
So when all this started, I was originally just sitting on the sidelines again because my focus is more so on the art community. And so I've been involved in the conversation of artists getting canceled for drawing the wrong thing, but I wasn't knee deep in the video game aspect of it just yet. And what set me off was after Alyssa wrote the Kotaku article, Dr. Cowart came out through Take This and wrote an article linking it. Now, somebody else came out and said, hey, these people are funded by DHS, but they didn't really go too deep into it. And for some reason, that stuck with me. DHS, for those who don't know, is the Department of Homeland Security in America. And they focus on extremism and terrorist recruitment, basically, trying to keep the homeland safe. They are also one of the, I'm sorry if you can hear my cat in the background.
That's okay.
They're also one of the big spenders for government. So they give out grants all the time, but I couldn't let that go to the point of, I actually called DHS and I said, hey, could you look up this grant number for me? Because Take This sprinkles it randomly on their website. And they couldn't be found through their business name, through the tax name. And I was so confused. I was like, surely this is a problem on my part. And a Google search a few hours later led me to find out that they managed to get the grant by partnering with Middlebury College using the language of extremism and terrorist recruitment through video games. And that set me down the rabbit hole. So we have Dr. Cowart to thank for me uncovering all of this and finding all the grants.
I have a bit of a point of clarification. So you're saying that you weren't actually able to find the entity behind this group?
So Take This tries to prop themselves up, and on their website, they randomly list at the bottom of some articles, not all of them, that, this work is made possible through the funding of DHS, and then they list the grant number. And so DHS actually publicly shows all of the approved grants that they've had. And when you go to search for it, I was searching for Take This. But they're not listed under Take This because Take This themselves is not directly funded. They had to work with, a college in order to get it.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's sort of like a deflection. So we're not dealing with like corporate shell games or like multiple nested companies to hide stuff. Probably
no,
not
it's
in this case.
Government shell games.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even better.
sociologists in made-up fields enjoy propping themselves up through funding, and unfortunately, DHS loves to fund you if you use the right language. DHS has funded a number of things in the past. Wasteful government spending is a very spicy topic. You can go to Google and you can find so many different wasteful spending articles from all sides of the aisle, you know, from the left, from the right, whatever people label it as. This, unfortunately, is another wasteful spending one. So they received $669,000 for 2 years. I think it was. Yeah, it was them. Sorry, there's multiple too that I've looked into for some funding. There's another group that received $700,000. So it's fun if you look at what DHS spends their money on.
Yeah, we went down this particular rabbit hole with a Twitter user named BX. I think on X, and she actually alerted us to the fact that apparently DHS has funded some kind of initiative that's looking at us in particular, which is
basically what they call manosphere content, with the desire to
adjacent.
We're basically considered managed because we're this channel, Badger Live Streams, has a focus on discussing issues faced by men and boys that are overlooked by people in most other areas. Things like, you know, child custody, divorce court, false allegations, circumcision, basic things, right? But with the DHS, they paid, I think it was also $700,000 for in grants to certain, I guess you could say, counter influencers in universities to try to redirect traffic away from content like ours towards more, feminist friendly type of destinations. And so it's really weird because that happened. We learned about that really like just a few months before we learned about the Sweet Baby Inc. thing. And now you're bringing forward the exact same thing, which is what got my attention. So, and I think that this, to me, speaks to the possibility that there's a lot more things like this going on in all aspects of our, our media, as well as our social media and our schools and everything else. Because, I mean, what are the odds, of like, I don't know, of casting your net in an ocean and pulling up a swordfish twice, and not that there not being something weird about that.
It's very strange because all the groups use the very same language. 10 years ago, it was a different type of language. Now it's extremism and conservative voices that they're targeting, but it's all very anti-male, which is so strange. And unfortunately, our entertainment industry, with it not being, something that's survival based, like something that you need in your life, they really, really want to be able to control that and really continue to push whatever narrative that they want. But it comes in cycles, of course. So, we're seeing now pushback because people are refusing to be controlled by this because the statistics do not support their claims. In fact, the sociologists a part of these groups, take some of the EGRN who I've delved into, they were the ones who just got the Canadian grant for $317,000 looking into the exact same thing of the extremism and terrorist recruitment in video games. Their own people acknowledge that there's no information to support this. But when they write their grants and they're requesting funding, they make it sound like an immediate problem. So it's really disingenuous. And that's how you know that it's all a fake grift, that they're just latching onto something so that way they can get their next paycheck.
Yeah. Allison, are you familiar with Take This? I feel like if you don't know what it is, you might need a little bit of a refresher on that.
I am not familiar with Take This. Please give me the rundown so that I.
Are you sure? Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. No. Okay.
I'm gonna tell you. No, it just sounded like you're acting a little bit. Okay. So I have the website here on the screen.
I'm not genuine.
No. I mean, I was just wondering if you knew, but you thought that we were just doing like an ad, like, oh, I am not familiar with this particular candidate. Can you please tell me more?
Yeah. What do 10 dentists say about?
Yeah. What do 7 out of 10 doctors say about? So okay. So what is Take This? You can. I have it up on the screen here. Savvy, can you give a little? Can you give a little summary of them, of what they do, or what they say they do on paper?
take this. Actually, on paper, it sounds like a very nice initiative. They basically focus on mental health in video games. So they claim to want to uplift individuals struggling with mental health. They want to help create safe environments and provide a community for individuals who maybe have been bullied or suffer from harassment or things like that. They are in no way, shape, or form, in my opinion, just looking at their website, qualified to talk about terrorist recruitment. But what do I know? What do I know? I'm just an artist.
Yeah, and when I learned about them, Allison, is when they had this article here called Responding to Gamergate 2, which I am should be sharing this now. And it basically goes, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I think that, you can conclude that this is, it's the same old song, right? It's just like there's a bunch of, terrible, hateful people on the internet harassing women and people of color, and that it's all abuse and it's all really bad. And Take This is supposed to be in support of people with special needs. So it's a bit rich, but like a bit worrying in my opinion too. So that's kind of like one of the things that sent Savvy down the rabbit hole.
Okay.
So okay, I have this other thing I'm going to share, and this is something that really got my attention. It was this Girl Geek Academy. So what's the deal with this, Savvy?
It is, so I guess it started in Australia, and while I don't have demographic information for Australia off the top of my head or experiences in Australia the way that I do for America, I do have friends in the education system out there, and I'm told it's very similar to America. So when I talk about my personal experiences in a second, I'm pretty sure it can all be applied to Australia as well. But basically, they are an initiative started by three white women and an Asian woman, attempting to state that the STEM career field is regressing in terms of gender equality. Every single piece of information in the last 5 years will tell you opposite, so I'm not certain where they're getting this information from, but they've somehow managed to shoehorn themselves into some talks with some big companies, Nintendo and Lego being some of them, where they've somehow convinced them that women are not taken seriously in the STEM field, that there's no funding for women, that there's no push to get women into science, that there's no women in game development. They've given talks at GDC, and there were a couple of other big things that they had done as well. But overall, they're basically using antiquated data to try to support themselves to get money through consulting, just like all these other groups. So it's just more disingenuous, bullpucky. If you go to at the very top, they say, read our latest report.
I have it right here. I'm going to share it right now. It's this PDF, right?
Yeah, well, actually, so if you go back to the page by one, we don't even have to look at that. If we look at their top 5 key findings, which are not backed by any form of data, links, statistics whatsoever.
Yeah, it's right here. Yeah, break them down.
I'm going to break each of these down. So number 1, it says girls and women passionate and interested in STEM are squeezed out of the learning and the industry at all stages of the career. That is BS. They are actually fast-tracked and preyed upon in a way, because the moment that a woman says, I like science in college, your advisors and your professors are way up your arse trying to shoehorn you into something. I personally had 2 professors individually trying to sway me in their directions, which put me off a good bit, because it didn't matter what I was interested in, even though I would tell them. They just said, well, you should come over here because reasons. The only professor to actually give a damn about my interests was actually my writing class professor, and he tried to get me to switch because he loved going over my work, because he thought I was a curious case of how can you write this well being so poorly read? I don't understand you. So, even at the professor level, at the introductory classes, they want to keep you there. Number 2, the STEM career pipeline is designed for men, not women. There's no gender lens. Again, that is complete bullpucky. It has been degraded for the fast tracking, and the standards have been lowered over time to allow more people through. This is evident, as you can see, at every level of education in our system. Fewer people than ever are actually prepared for college now, and even worse, they will be lenient with you. I personally, again, was miserable at chemistry. I don't understand a lot of the concepts in it, especially the math, but they overlooked it because I was a woman. There was a guy who I was side by side with. He actually did better than me, and he was not allowed to pass, but I was. So explain that, number 2. Number 3, the STEM field fails to provide efficient role models for women, men, or non-binary people. This has got to be, again, the most bullshit line that they've got. Role models...
Just a second. They don't. STEM industry fails to provide effective role models for women, men, or non-binary people. Well, why don't you just say humans? The STEM industry.
Non-binary STEM effective role model.
Yeah,
what?
No, it's.
I know.
That covers everyone.
Yeah, that kind of covers everybody, unless of course.
Role models for like lizard people, aliens, Cthulhu,
yes.
what?
The Greys.
So weird.
Well, sorry, it's
just rhetoric. It's just rhetoric,
in my opinion.
They're casting a magic spell with words. But go on, Savvy.
Yeah, so apparently famous scientists have never existed. I'm surprised they don't actually have an entire shrine to Dorothy Hodgkin, because she's one of the most important, I think, women in science. But I mean, again, that's debatable. But so she was she basically helped with developing X-rays, so that way we could determine structures at the biomolecular level, which we all rely on today in science. So I don't know how they can get away with writing this, and I don't know why companies don't care enough to ask enough questions, but it's because they get a checkbox. You know, if they work with Girl Geek Academy, they get a checkbox for their taxes. They get a checkbox for funding. The next one, number 4, investment in talented girls and women is inadequate and discriminatory, resulting in a loss of innovation and economic benefit to Australia. Again, this is another flat out lie. And I would know this because I was too lazy to pursue any of the scholarships that were available just for women and women only, which requires 0 talent for application. When I say 0 talent, I'm not insulting anyone. I'm stating that you literally apply to it, state that you're a woman, state what you're interested in, and then you'll get funding based off of if that field needs more people or not. And then the last one, being a gender change agent in technology is exhausting and traumatizing, and the backlash is real. There is 0 backlash. In fact, they are creating the backlash by lowering all of the educational standards. So in the next 10 years, we're going to see a lot of problems because the standards have been lowered so much, and they're only going to have to lower even more. So there's all these unprepared individuals going into medicine right now, and that's going to cause some real health problems in the future for all people, not just the people with the jobs. So yeah, that's my breakdown.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, like, we have the paper. I could send it to Allison. She could look through that to see if the methodology is solid. Pretty sure I know where it's going to land, but it is worth, I guess, maybe looking at. But I wanna look at this a little bit more closely. So number 1, this jumped out at me immediately, and I'm trying to find the link here because they give you, first of all, these colors are just like hurting my eyeballs for one. Yeah. I don't like, why would you, if you're serious about getting women into STEM, why would you make this look like, you know, the romper room? Like why would you make it look so childish? It's really condescending. Like, just I'm not even a woman, and I feel like pandered to in a really awful way. But yeah, the colors, like,
you with these
what's with all the pastels? This is ugly. But look, okay, so number 1 is this. It says girls and women passionate and interested in STEM are squeezed out of learning and industry at all stages of their career. So they give you like their thesis or whatever on one problem, and then they add like this, you know, this, I don't know, mantra or chant, you know, fix the blank, not the girls, right? Why does it say fix the violence, not the girl. Is that like how women are being kept out of STEM? I know they're not being kept out of STEM. I know that's not happening. I know that you're right. They're being pushed into it regardless of their skill set. Like, you know, women are getting like way more degrees. They're much more educated than men. That doesn't mean they're smarter. They're more educated though. They're getting an education at higher rates, and they're being pushed into every discipline, in particular the STEM fields. Like that's like a place, you know, specifically. So that's not happening. But on top of that though, like, why is the narrative that there is some kind of threat to girls trying to go into STEM? Why would it say fix the violence and not the girls? Have you thought about this?
It's just part of the only way that they can get people on their side. They have to create a problem, even if the problem doesn't exist. And it comes from people who don't know how to write, how to present themselves, or how to research. So all this tells me is that they don't actually have an education, and that they're just screaming infants trying to use words to basically bully people into this. Like, oh, you don't think that there's enough women in STEM? What are you, violent? What are you, a terrible person? Why don't you want women in science? Do you not think women can do this? And then that's all they do. They don't try to actually show you statistics, because again, all of the statistics, if you look at the last 3 or 4 years even, the percents are only increasing for the number of women joining the field.
Yes.
And just because too, the other thing to this is, just because women aren't joining it at a 50-50 rate, they need to look into what women are actually going into, because a lot of women, and again, this isn't all of them, but a lot of them go into more care-related fields. We have, you know, again, nurses programs that are predominantly women. I don't see them complaining about that, and that's still considered STEM in a way.
Yeah, medicine.
Yeah. So, you know, women want to be more so in a position of care or a front-facing part of the industry, or other jobs. You know, like real estate agents are a lot of them are women, and that's because it's a very sociable position. Women excel at positions like that. Now, if they really wanted to focus on equality, they should be saying, "Hey, women need to join the oil fields." Women need to join construction. But of course they don't. They don't care about that narrative, because that's where these people all crumble. So.
Yeah. So before I say the next thing, Allison, do you want to say anything to that?
Well, of course they use the word violence because violence is scary. And if you say, well, wait, let's look at the statistics. What are you actually asking for? What are you saying? What are you saying about reality? They'll just say, well, are you for violence against women? And it's very difficult to come back from that. I mean, you're like, oh, yes.
Yeah, because almost nobody is, right? So
yeah, nobody is.
It is a good way to put people immediately on the back foot.
Yeah, sure. Immediately on the defensive. And then everybody focuses on trying to either fight off the accusation, well, prove that they don't really care about violence. And then the whole process of actually ascertaining if these people are describing something that is real goes to the back burner. It's a way of turning people's brains off and making them comply. So that's why they use the word violence, and it has actually nothing to do with reality. Because I do not think that they're like, you know, Clockwork Orange gangs in universities, anti-women in STEM gangs. I mean, there was that one guy like in the 80s in Canada, and we've never stopped talking about it. Never.
Yeah. And
the
other problem too is a lot of people are not trained in the art of speaking when it comes to asking questions. This isn't a skill that's taught in school. It comes from experience typically, or not enough people are pushed into debate. So what you said is actually spot on. You know, people will suddenly start deflecting and start trying to prove that they're not for violence, when what they need to ask is, well, what violence is being done? Make these people explain themselves, and you'll find that they can't. And that's my whole shtick too on Twitter. All I do is ask people to explain themselves, and they never do.
I do the same thing. I do the same thing on Twitter. That's a lot of my activity. I eventually get a lot of the individuals who use these kinds of narratives. I don't want to use the words them, but they use these narratives to extort compliance, and then I will just ask them questions which they never want to stand for anything. They never want to clarify their points, and eventually it'll come down to one question, that one yes or no question that they refuse to answer. Just refuse, flat out refuse, because they want it both ways. They want to be able to say, yes, the violence is horrible, but then not be responsible for having said it, because then they'd have to, they'd have to produce receipts, and so it's this constant like refusal to answer questions, and even regarding questions as being offensive, which is amazing to me. I'm like, they'll say things like, it's not my job to educate you. Have you gotten that yet?
Oh gosh, I've seen it. No one has personally said it to me, because my questions are so poignant, and
yeah, they have to be really pointed too, so they can't like run from them. Yep.
It's interesting, and the people who try to stand in for the original poster, they are so easy to dismantle, because they one, cannot speak for them, and two, suddenly the narratives are slightly different because there's a lot of now infighting with these types of people. So it's fun to watch them try to think. It's kind of like giving a monkey a really advanced problem, and he really wants the prize, he really wants the banana, but he has no idea how to push the shapes through the hole.
So I want to say that I really appreciate your perspective on this, because this is kind of like, I don't know if you were involved with Gamergate 10 years ago. You were probably like too young to care, but I don't know.
God, no.
Yeah. So when this was going on 10 years ago, one thing I was trying to do was bring people's attention to what I think was the real problem. Like, people were talking about the ethics in journalism thing, and I was like, well, wait a minute, but where do the ethics come from? Like, it's not simply like people are taking money from developers and getting like hotel rooms and flights. I mean, that's not really cause to attack your customer base, right? Like, call them names and claim that they're bigots and all this other stuff. Like, where do they get the weapon? Where does the weapon come from, and why do they use it this way, and why are they unable to have a moment of self-reflection, or why do they always double down, why do they always lie, why do they always project, right? And no one was like, I mean, some people caught on to that, and they kind of like it informed their future actions and their beliefs, but a lot of people didn't quite get it, and they were just like, well, I just want my games to be like reviewed fairly or something. Well, reviewed fairly at that time. Now now that it's having like a direct impact, it's not like people on the outside, that journalists and political commentators and activists on YouTube, with their little websites, making remarks about like how games are toxic and the gamer audience is toxic. Or now it's the people,
their independent efforts, their indie games, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or support promoting the indie games that nobody wants to play because they're just not interested. But now it's people that are actually involved in the industry, and they're shaping and changing like the landscape at the highest levels, at AAA levels, right? And when people say, well, I think I'm gonna make, like when Carbutus Rambo, who was a guest on our show, when he was like, well, I think I'm gonna make a list of all the games these people are involved with, he gets attacked for it. And so I guess this is a two-part thing. One is, I appreciate that you are looking behind the curtain and not getting caught up in like, let me make the defense for why Resident Evil 5 is not racist. But you're like, wait a minute. Wherever this comes from, let's get to that. And why is this happening? And so like, I guess what I want to ask you is, what do you think it is? Where do you think it's coming from?
So it is a deeper problem, and I'm using problem a little bit loosely here. Our governments around the world have somehow managed to incentivize this concept of DEI, of ESG. And so companies obviously look for profits. They want to save money. If I spend, $80,000 here to hire this checkbox individual, and we can say, hey, we're ESG approved. Hey, we've got this many diverse characters. Or we've got these types of people working for us, or we have these kinds of demographics in our company, then they get to save money in the long run. They get to save money through loans. They get investment opportunities through BlackRock and Vanguard. They get tax breaks and whatever else. Sometimes even, and this is an unfortunate side effect that a lot of people haven't actually spoken too much on, is the lower quality individuals that they're hiring also means they don't have to pay them as much. So the more people take these positions for a lower amount of a salary, the worse it is for everybody in the long run. And so what happened with Gamergate 1 was really odd. I was 20 something at the time, and I was in college, and I didn't pay too much attention to it, but I thought it was a load of bullpucky, and I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. And unfortunately, it made it to the UN, and they turned everything into a disingenuous conversation, because by the early 2000s, we had solved social problems. We had solved a lot of the issues that they're claiming is the problem now, and they're creating the problems now so that way they can get money, because they don't have the skills to go make their own studios, to go create their own characters and their own stories and things like that. And this ties back into the concept of the entertainment industry not being a survival need for people, but something that people do enjoy and that people spend a lot of their money on. It's a luxury thing. And so as life becomes easier, more people are getting involved in luxury goods, even though only something like, I think, what is it, like 2% of the world is on the internet daily. That's a big number when you think about the global population. So that's a lot of money for advertisers. That's a lot of money for companies. That's a lot of money for movies and games and all of this, right? You look at how much money moves through the gaming industry alone. It's ridiculous. That's why BlackRock invested into Nintendo. So it all comes down to money, unfortunately. Nobody gives a crap. And you can see the language too with actually AI. I'm just going to liken it to this really, really quickly. So there are now video games that come out and say, "Oh, we've got AI in our system. We've got an AI, an artificial intelligence memory system for our characters, and they'll remember the choices that you make." Well, we've had that since Fallout, and it was just called the memory system. It wasn't AI related, but the companies who are claiming it now to be AI are getting additional funding, because that's the next best thing. That's the next jump now. We're going to go from diversity to AI. And that's where all the VC money is. That's where the next tech investments are. So they're misrepresenting things again to get funding, and that's it. All of this is just one giant misinterpretation of data, because you can make data say whatever you want, so that way they can get funding at the end of the day. That's it.
So basically nobody actually believes this stuff. Yep.
No, not one.
I actually came to that conclusion for a long time on Honey Badger Radio. We would do reactions to feminist presentations. It's mostly feminist presentations, because then I can get into why. And what I noticed over and over and over again is this particular expression on their faces, which is consistent with something. Have you heard something called duping delight? Dupers delight?
It's probably.
It is an expression when somebody who is getting away with a lie or getting away with something. It's like it's a cockeyed grin. It's unmistakable. When you see it on somebody's face, you can tell that it's basically the same as like the cat that ate the canary, the shit-eating grin. To use the, but so I saw it again and again and again. They're describing these horrible things, but with a cockeyed grin on their face. I'm like, what the heck? And it clued in eventually. They don't believe what they're talking about. They're selling you something that they don't even believe themselves. They don't even care, except that it just opens up wallets and gets people to listen to them and comply. And that's it. That's all it is. It's mouth noises to hit buttons and get things. Like you were saying, like an infant who just throws a temper tantrum in order to acquire goods or acquire I don't know, a lolly or whatever they want. And
so there's actually a great book that I wish that I could recommend for every single person to read. It's called What Every Body is Saying. It's by an ex-FBI agent. And so he actually teaches you how to read people's facial expressions. This is how they profile people. And this was something that I read back in college. And what you're describing is exactly something that he gave it a different name. But these kinds of skills are super, super important for people, because when you watch these people present at like GDC or watch their presentations, you know, listen to it without sound and just read their body language, because you're exactly right on the way that their facial expressions are. And they tell you everything you need to know about these, you know, like it shows how narcissistic they are and what they're getting away with. Like you can't hide your face. It's basic biology. You know, you these people are not trained. They won't know that they're giving everything away through their body language.
Or maybe the next stage is that they'll train and start to appear very genuine and
that requires effort. No, that requires effort, and these people don't do effort.
If they did effort, they would create something of worth.
I think there might be an instinct though to pick up on this. But okay, so I wanna ask something else, but before we do, I should read the super chow that we got, and maybe let people know if you guys want to send us a message. If you have any questions for Savvy, you can send a super chow by going to feedthebachelor.com/justthetip, or you can send a super chat or a Rumble rant. I'm watching the Rumble chat as well. And shout out to everybody who is watching over on Honey Badger Arcade and Rumble. Thank you so much. Okay, so this super chow comes from Richard Bier, who gives us $5 and says, there used to be an infomercial guy who wore a suit with the question marks all over it, and he was selling a directory of every government grant program available. This thing looked less like a metropolitan telephone directory. So this wasteful spending isn't limited to a single department in the government. Remember what I said about that wash bay, and consider that the disbursement of funds is somewhere between 10 and 20% of what is bought into the government, or brought into the government, as the remainder is absorbed by overhead and administrative costs. Thank you for that super chow.
So what he's saying is that the 700,000 is actually probably represents 7 million of taxpayer money. Just to
it's probably
for nothing.
It's probably really understated for sure.
Oh yeah,
okay.
Taxpayer dollars.
Yeah. So it's we're funding this basically. We're funding the government to monitor, like, probably, you know, the least harmful people, while ignoring
government to monitor people's entertainment.
Yeah. But you know, it is. But I must say though, what it says to me is that the entertainment that we consume is actually more important than we give it credit, in terms of what the government thinks, but not only that, but also all the people involved in creating our media. Like, they have, like, so Savvy, you're an artist, I'm an artist, and Allison is an artist. And Allison's a writer, but you do paintings and drawings and what do you call them? Installations, like kind of more, you know, big things. But I bring this up because this Gamergate thing is of particular importance to me anyway, because I am an advocate of beauty. And so I don't like where it's going in terms of like what is being put into our media, and not just in gaming, but in every bit of our entertainment, from, you know, our film and television and music, and even like what, you know, even the art that we, you know, might see in a museum, for example. And so I have to ask then, like, what I think that there is and I don't know why this is, but I think there is like an effort to essentially tear down everything beautiful in our culture, and it's supposed to demoralize us. You know, like, why has the architecture become brutalist, like ghettos, like giant square buildings, for example? Why are
funny?
Oh, go ahead.
It's funny that you bring that up, because there's one instance in history where I can think about somebody tried to control art and media, and that didn't really work out too well for him. And
Was he not himself an artist?
Oh, he was, I guess.
I can think of another particularly perhaps aggressive person who may have attempted to control culture and art.
Mm-hmm.
And that also did not really end well, at least for the people he was controlling. But
I did not realize that this was going to go as deep as it did into art, because it comes back to what I was initially speaking out or fighting against a few years ago. So my big thing is artistic freedom, obviously. And Japanese artists have been bullied off of Twitter for years now for drawing the wrong thing, for putting the wrong characters together, for not drawing the right skin tone colors, even if they were a pastel artist. The list goes on and on for whatever reason. And so these relatively reserved individuals suddenly were getting hate from, 50 to 100 accounts. Well, what these people were doing was they'd collect in Discords, and it's usually like 5, 10, 20 people who all have alternate accounts as well. So like they'll have 5 to 10 accounts themselves, and then they'll go coordinate bullying attacks on artists. And then because Japanese people or, Koreans, just the Asian culture in general, they're not typically people who are confrontational. So they're much easier to bully than a Western individual. But they still also targeted Western individuals too. And so for years now, this has been going on, but it's finally getting to the point where people are pushing back saying, hey, we don't have to listen to them.
When you say Japanese artists, you mean like kind of like the old style sumi art, like of the feudal period, or you mean more like modern kind of anime stuff?
Modern. This is all very modern. This is all been happening. So it's like fandom, for example.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've seen your art. It's in. Yeah, I've seen your art, and it's along those lines. Very nice, by the way.
Thank you.
I mean, you created this portrait too. Thank you for sharing that with us so people can see. And check out Savvy's art. Go to her Twitter page and look at the stuff that she's made. She's got a website with a Substack, and you should just go look at it. And that's it. I appreciate beautiful art, so I like what you're doing. But anyway,
we have throughout like the length of time that we've been doing this work, we have talked to a lot of artists who have been bullied by these people who use these narratives. It's specifically people who use these narratives, like you hate women. For women, it's you have internalized misogyny. This is violence against women. Whatever else, they'll do that.
You're a pick-me.
They'll use that to justify silencing and manipulating and coercing and censoring people, artists in particular. And that is one of the things that also really, really bothered me about a lot of the stuff that I was seeing in relation to Gamergate. But even before then, I don't know if I think Shirtgate was before Gamergate, right?
No, well, maybe. Yeah, I think so. Shirtgate, do you know what that is, Savvy?
No, and I'm afraid to ask.
Oh, it's a little thing, but Allison, you can tell her.
Oh yeah, okay. So there was a I will not get any of the names correct, but so don't ask because I'm terrible with names. But there was I believe a rocket scientist who landed a probe on an asteroid. He was like the head of the team that landed a probe on an asteroid. And so it was this incredible monumental thing, because it was very difficult to do. And to the news conference about this thing that this team had done, which was like groundbreaking, he wore a shirt that was covered in pinup art. Okay.
It was custom made for him by a friend of his.
But a woman, like, so he actually wore it because it was his friend's work, and he got blasted. The individuals who use this narrative, well, let's say feminists mostly, they made that situation all about the shirt instead of the fact that someone had landed a probe on an asteroid and advanced humanity that much more. And he had to apologize for the shirt that he wore, and all because they did not like the art on it. And he was even breaking down during his apology too. It was horrible.
He had to he made a tearful apology. He was pretty abused. And we know that bullying can happen online, sure, but it is weird that like when it comes from a certain direction, there doesn't seem to be a lot of consequences. I'm not sure that I even want consequences. Like, I'm a free speech absolutist. Yeah, condemnation at least, or ridicule or something. But that didn't seem to be the case. So it kind of reminds me of what happened with, was it Chris Kindred, who tried to get the Sweet Baby Ink Detected group shut down, and also Brutus Rambo's account on Steam essentially just nullified, which would have cost him thousands of dollars, because he has like a large library of games, and he lives in Brazil where the economy is crap because of people who Chris Kindred likely would have voted for. but yeah, so this is like what we do. But go ahead, Allison.
Yeah, well, basically, just I was piggybacking off of what you said about artists being targeted, and that is also a particular thing that we've talked about on this show, and something that's near and dear to my heart, because I was sort of targeted as an artist too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember. Go ahead.
The language, it comes to the language being used too by Microsoft. That stupid guideline thing that they put out saying, are your female characters over exaggerated? Do they have gender barriers in their design? And I'm like, what the fuck is a gender barrier? I'm sorry. I've been trying to be good about not dropping F-bombs, but
no,
it's okay. Yeah, we were really bad about that. But here, I'll bleep you out if you need.
You are fined 1 credit for a violation of the verbal morality statute.
Oh, good. But yeah, it comes to that. And so when I was younger, I thought the future was 100% creative freedom for all people to be able to enjoy what they want to enjoy, to draw what they want to draw, whether it was sexy or not sexy, whether it was furry or not furry, whether it was, whatever, right? Because that's important. A society that is free to create and free to express themselves is a beautiful society, in my opinion. And they are essentially doing what they claimed the Christians did back in the 90s and the early 2000s, that they're being pearl-clutching prudes. How dare you draw a woman like that? How dare your female characters in video games be over-sexualized? Bro, everything's sexualized. Sex sells. We all know that. The female gaze is as potent as the male gaze. The most devious of mods for some games like Skyrim and for The Sims come from women. I don't see you condemning them. Why are you condemning the male gaze, which funds your fucking cries for OnlyFans being a source of empowerment? Like, pick a lane and just shut up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only constant is women most affected, women most oppressed. Yep. And I wanted to say too that they do actually condemn romance novels. There's been tons and tons of getting in there and trying to extort people to like what they're supposed to like, and so they do it to women. And I've actually seen it myself. It's just it seems like men have less of a defense. I'll say that, but they do to female creatives too if they step out of line. Like my own personal story is I went to a convention. I was originally a supporter of Gamergate. I put a Gamergate logo on my booth, and that apparently got me the attention of the mean girls of the convention. And then I went to a conference for women into comics, because I'm actually a female comics creator, or I was then. Now I'm going much more into writing. But so I went to this talk, and they actually brought up the whole thing, like why do men not want women in comics? What's wrong with these men's rights activists? So I stood up and said, well, would you like me to speak to that, because I am one. And I said, the reason why I don't like the feminism coming in is because, it casts women in the role of victim and men in the role of villain. And I think that denies, men's vulnerability and women's agency. And they were like, throughout the entire talk, everyone was like, yeah, nodding, and it was all polite. And then I went back to my booth, and the next day it was gone. Just boom, gotta go.
Yeah. These people they're just insane. And unfortunately, you know, I don't understand too this logic. We are at a time now where it is easier than ever to create, whether it's artwork, whether it's video games, the technology is there. You know, it is so easy to put your own work out through YouTube, through a website, through Twitter. Anyone has the opportunity to go viral through TikTok, through Twitter, through whatever. And instead of creating something new, they want to change what exists because they know they can't create. They know they don't have the talent, and they know what they would create is so dry, nobody wants it. So
yeah, I was gonna say, I noticed that you do world building. You have wrote about this at least, right? Is that accurate? Did I okay discern that? Yeah, I think you're right, because this is the thing that I noticed. I noticed that what's going on right now in not just the gaming space, but all of our creative sort of like areas, in particular where they are mainstream, because there's always options. If you can find people that are truly talented and gifted and are creating good things, unfortunately though, those are not the ones that get propped up, right? Their brands stay small. And what happens with these cultural vandals is that they get into a brand that is extremely popular, that was built up, you know, like Star Trek is like, I don't know, how old is that? Like from the 60s, right? So probably like 70 years old. Or Doctor Who, which is even older or something. And they see that it's very successful, and they think that they can just write anything for it, and because it's already popular, they will benefit. You know, it's like standing on the shoulders of giants, right? And it's because they can't make their own thing. So whenever people make the case, hey, well, you know, if you want to make your own thing, go ahead, like nobody's stopping you, right? They always like weasel out of that, because making your own thing is gonna, essentially, you're gonna have to like succeed on merit alone. And a lot of people like that, they don't want to do that, because it's easier to just co-opt Star Wars or co-opt, you know, comic books or whatever. And I think there is a reason for that, and I wanna show you. Well, first of all, I do think it's easier for people to co-opt something and they can get money, but I want to show you this. So in the animation industry, I have a friend, and I consider him a friend. His name is Luke Weber, and he worked in animation for many years. He's a very, very talented artist. He was professional. He worked on Ben 10 and the Ninja Turtles, and what's another one? Steven Universe, Adventure Time, what Over the Garden Wall, you know, just a bunch of really big cartoons. Extremely talented guy. And then, and this is, I think, where what's important, because this is where I think it all came from. He got fired. Okay, he was pushed out of the business, even though he had lots of experience. And what the catalyst for this was the MeToo movement. So, and this is the thing that a lot of people are talking about cancel culture today. Cancel culture came out of the MeToo movement. The MeToo movement was like how it got its legs, right? And the MeToo movement was only successful because it was women's victimhood that was the focus. Yes, there were men who spoke up, but their concerns were immediately like ignored. Like they kind of fell by the wayside. Terry Crews, he was one of the first guys to talk about it. Nobody talks to him about it anymore. It's just gone. Like they used him to you know, to bring up toxic masculinity talking points, and then they dropped him like a rag, and then it was off to something else, right? And what started happening was, in all of these various unions, there were women's groups that rose up, and they were demanding all kinds of things. They wanted representation. They wanted positions of leadership. They wanted positions of power. And they ended up like gutting a bunch of industries and firing men, claiming, you know, the environment was toxic or whatever. The men would lose their jobs.
Was there anything actually concrete said against Luke, or did he just get on the wrong side?
No, Luke was just, yeah,
he really eerie thing.
He didn't, yeah, a lot of these guys, they just got canned, and they didn't even, there were no allegations. There was no paperwork.
I mean, he just was, you know, somebody wanted his job, or maybe somebody just didn't like him.
Yeah. So what it was is that Luke was the kind of guy, this is according to him, but I don't see any reason not to believe him, that he was the kind of guy that would go to work and he just wanted to focus on his job and leave. He wasn't the kind that hung out afterwards. He didn't like create, he wasn't trying to contribute to some kind of like social culture at work. You know, some people want to make their business into like something casual, like we're all like roommates in this bohemian, you know, work atmosphere. And Luke wasn't like that. He was kind of an introverted guy. I mean, he's still around. I don't mean to say talk about him like he's in the past tense. He's on Twitter. You can look him up. It's at Fresher Luke. Very good work. And he's struggling. He's like driving an Uber right now because he can't find a work anywhere. So he just got fired because he wasn't in the in crowd. He wasn't in with people, right? So they pushed him out, and particularly the women pushed him out. And so one of those women is the woman who created Steven Universe. So what happened was, in the animation industry, they wrote this big open letter to the entire industry, and it was signed by like a whole bunch of women, and they were all talking about how toxic the work environment was. And it just so happened at the same time, there was this group, which I'm displaying for you guys right now, called Women in Animation, and they have this initiative called 50/50 by 2025. And essentially, it is doing the exact same thing that geek gamer girl thing that you were talking about is doing. They are making the same claims. 70% of animation school grads are underrepresented genders. Only 34% of industry creatives are women, you know, and this needs to be fixed. And it says even here, even once they're in the industry, women, non-binary, and transgender people still face significant barriers to advancement. So they're operating under the exact same mantra. It's just in the animation. It's the same model. It's just in the animation industry. And this is what happened. I think this is what happened to Blizzard. So, you know, on the Blizzard is the game developer. Mark Kern, who you know as Grums on Twitter, he used to work at Blizzard. He was one of the guys that put Blizzard on the map as like one of the best developers. Now Blizzard is a joke, honestly. Like, nobody plays Overwatch 2. You know, I don't know that nobody's given a shit about Diablo for a long time. And I think it's because the entire environment has changed. Not just because Activision bought them, although you guys might have opinions on that, but I think it's because the actual staff is not the same animal. The whole thing has a different vibe. Yeah, it's got a different vibe, right? So the animation industry also faced the same thing, and they did the same thing. And there is a financial incentive, as you were saying, but I do wonder about that, because I do think there's something else. Like, there is a religious and ideological aspect for sure, and also a power aspect. Like, there's something about the power, which I think is even more of a drive than money, because these people are okay with inflation. They're okay with printing money. They're okay with like all that stuff. But if you have power over people, I mean, doesn't that even like, isn't that stronger than money? Doesn't it have more sway? I mean, I don't know if I'm making any sense, but that's my suspicion.
No, it does. So power is sexy. It is inherently sexy to narcissistic people. And so unfortunately, and you can see this with everything, this isn't even just an industry thing, this is just a human thing. The loudest people about this tend to be the most narcissistic and the most corrupt. They have no sense of shame. When you look at the BLM movement, if you talk to the people who were actually at protests, and I did this back in DC in 2019 or 2020, I went and brought water to them. So I have a rare UV allergy. I can't be out in the sun for more than a few minutes without getting an allergy.
Yeah, I understand that you're actually a vampire. Like, you can't stand the sun or garlic. So,
correct.
You know, yeah. So I will remember that. That way, you have to invite her in, or she won't be able to enter your home, guys.
Yes. But, so you know, when I talked to those people, they were some of the nicest, most level-headed individuals who were out there who just believed in headlines. They, you know, they had normal jobs that they took the day off from to try to do something good based off of the lies of the individuals up at the top who were misusing funds, who lived in mansions, who were doing the very things that they were supposed to be fighting against. So, you know, this isn't just an industry problem looking for power and entertainment. This is just a generalized power grab. This is just what these people do, because the average human does not want to be called mean. They do not want to be called names, and they don't want to have confrontation. But we're just at a point where finally people are sick of it.
Yeah. Well, there's something that I was saying a while back when Gamergate was a little after Gamergate, because it sort of took a while to percolate in my mind and come together. But men's issues advocates, we've sort of been in the chasm, so to speak, like the outside the purview of acceptable speech for a long time. And I think the reason why is because we need to be invisible in order for these narratives to work. Because the counter narrative to, oh, this space oppresses women is, okay, well, but what is the situation? What are women's choices? What is it? What's happening with men? What do men have to do to get in this space? You know, that kind of thing. And because we're the counter narrative to this power, or to the weapon, I call it the weapon that they use, which is like violence against women. That's one of the weapons that they use. Internalized misogyny is another weapon that they use, and to extort compliance from people. The counter narrative to that weapon is what we talk about, is bringing in the perspective of men in these environments and in the greater world. And when you do that, their narrative starts to break apart. And I think that's why, because everything that happened to gamers, we watched, at least I did. I think Brian was part of it before that. We watched this happen to people who advocate for men's issues. Like, people who wanted, or men who were trying to build shelters, men who were trying to build support networks. There's like peer support for male victims of rape and domestic violence. I watched men doing these kinds of initiatives, and some women, I watched them being targeted and removed. Like there's story after story after story of people trying to bring attention to these issues, trying to bring people together to talk about them, and literally, and it is feminists, I'm sorry guys, would target these initiatives, support groups. I mean, God, who targets a support group? But they would target that to get rid of them. And the reason why was because any kind of awareness on these issues breaks apart the weapon that they used to extort people and to gain control. So they'll even go after people who are absolutely vulnerable. You know, people who really do, like men who do need somewhere to be heard. They'll even go after them just to ensure that their weapon remains effective. And that is really, I think that's why that we prior to Gamergate, we were watching this happen with a lot of different men's rights issues. The same rhetoric was used against, I don't know if you know Warren Farrell. He's like he's like the Mr. Rogers of the men's issues community. Like he's soft spoken, very nice, very let's all look at both sides, let's be really diplomatic, and
very diplomatic.
And he got called, what was it, a rape apologist and an advocate for women's violence against women and other kinds of stuff like that. Same narratives. And it was directed at men's issues advocates first, as far as I can tell. And then go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, the minute you try to say that, I think it's the number is 64% of men are physically abused by their female spouses. The minute that gets brought up, they just say, "Oh, wow, you hate women."
Oh yeah.
They don't even bother engaging with it all. They just go with the silencing tactic, which itself is constructed by the very thing that they're silencing.
Yep.
Like, and it's just, and that, like I said, they started with any kind of recognition of men's issues, people who tried to bring recognition of men's issues, and then that secures their weapon, and then they just, I don't know, loot the rest of society, I guess. And loot, like, just fly the Jolly Roger, pull up and start shooting cannons and taking over. And that's that's the business model, apparently.
Yeah, and it all thrives because of the degradation in the education system. Kids are not taught how to look things up. They are not taught how to critically think. They are just taught to read a headline and then keep scrolling. This is the first generation that is less technologically advanced than the one before it. And it's only going to get worse if we don't fix the education system. But that comes down to the government, which both sides of the aisle across most countries, they actively remove funding. They actively try to change programs to keep people complacent so that way they can control them better. Because a society without education is a society that is much more easy to control. But what's working against them is that this is the age of information, and it is easier than ever to find the bits of truth in easy to digest ways. That's why my video that I made on all of this is only 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And it's all based off of publicly available information that people can then go verify. That's why these people have not been able to attack me. They've not been able to quote tweet me and say, oh, look at this crazy person, because it's all based off of their words. It's all based off of their websites. All I do is just put it in easy to digest information or in an informative format.
Yep. Well, and a lot of times people don't know what they need to look for. So it's really useful to have it just sit there. So like, okay, this is where this is coming from. Because I think that is, again, like I was saying before, I think that's the most important questions to ask is like, okay, so we know this is happening. Like we people bring attention to it, and then we get hit pieces from Kotaku and other outlets saying that it's a conspiracy theory, it's not actually happening, you're crazy. And then when you break the conditioning on that, they say, okay, it's happening, but it's a good thing that it's happening, and there's nothing you can do about it, or whatever. You know, they try to make these various appeals.
Have you encountered the ones that say this is not happening and it's a good thing that it's happening?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, sure. Yeah,
I love those.
Yeah, they're ridiculous.
Yeah.
But then that begs the question, though. Like, okay, I watched a debate, and I put debate in quotes because it wasn't that hostile, but it was side scrollers, which you were on, and you know, I'm glad that you were, and I'm glad that you came on here because we're so much smaller. But I would like to talk to Stuttering Craig and those guys, because I remember when this whole thing started out. I said, oh, this is Gamergate too. And I said it before anybody made any videos. I was like, this is going to blow up. It's going to be a big thing, because I know the way that these people think. I know that what's going to happen is Sweet Baby's going to respond, because they're, you know, there is like an ideological possession is what I'm getting at. Like, they believe in what they are doing so much. They believe that they are good people and they are right and they are virtuous. So much that if anyone disagrees and says, oh, I don't like this, or I don't like what you're saying here, they're just going to double down, because they are on the right side of history in their own mind. And it's only a matter of time before like an outlet defends them. Like, I'm just waiting. I was just like, okay, at some point someone's going to write an article, and Kotaku did it, which should have been really predictable. And when that happened, I said, oh, yeah, this is it. This is Gamergate 2, which is fine. Like, I'm here for it. I'm ready for it, because this is what I want. I want this dealt with. I want this confronted, you know, because you saw it in small ways with like, you know, the Rings of Power, or the Star Wars movies, or Doctor Who, or whatever, right? The Marvel movies, the comic books, you know, and people were all, for some reason, there was a sense of shame or disgust at the idea that this was going to be something that people have to deal with. And Craig was one of them. He said, oh my God, what is Gamer? He didn't even know what it was. And I saw that, you know, he is now taking interest in it, which is great. I think it's great. And he's been talking to people, and he had this guy on that was like a former developer, and they were having this back and forth, and Craig was trying to like show him, like, this is what's happening. Here are some examples, you know, and the other guy was just like, well, I don't know about that, but I don't agree with like bullying online, you know. And so it was like going nowhere, and it was just spinning its wheels. And I was like, well, wait, but here's the thing. And this is what I want to get at. Okay. If if you really want to comment on this entire scenario, why wouldn't you do your due diligence and try to learn about it? And yet you want to go on a stream and debate someone, you know, who has actually done that work, who actually does know. Like, why aren't people interested in confronting this? And why does it make people so uncomfortable when they are faced with this, like, so do you think it's okay to be racist against white people? Because Alyssa Mercante says you can't be. So what do you think about that? And they'll be like, well, I don't know. That just sounds kind of weird to me. You know, like what is that?
Comfortable confronting like this, well, the weapon, like
yes,
and also the fact that this is a lot of people that are ideologically possessed. Maybe they just want money, whatever, that are pushing this. I'm guessing that's what you're asking, Brian.
That's what I'm getting at. Is I think that what I'm trying to get at is there seems to be a lack of moral courage to speak the truth, and instead people try to avoid having to speak out and say what is necessary, because I think this is the obstacle that we face, not just with this gaming thing, but everywhere, where there is clearly something wrong, and in secret people will tell you, yeah, I don't really agree with what they're doing here, right? I don't agree with the idea that you're a sexist. I don't really agree with with the MeToo movement. I don't really agree with, like, I don't know, Black Lives Matter and what they've done to cities all across the country, but I don't want to say anything. Yeah. And I think
it comes down to needing to feel good, but doing the bare minimum and being so uneducated that you have no idea what's going on. I think one of the things that really sums it up is there were two individuals who attempted to speak out about this earlier, and I presented them with, do you believe that the phrase abort all Jews is hate speech? And both of these people had to bend over backwards and say, well, I need context for that. And I said, no, I don't think you do, because please provide an example of context that makes that phrase okay. And not a soul has been able to come up with that. And my logic is, well, if you want to say, maybe in comedy, well, why are comedians then canceled for less? Why is it not okay to say that? And so they are so desperate to be seen as moral authorities and so desperate to feel good about themselves because they lack goodness in their lives. And I don't understand why the terminally online are so weak that they feel like they have to pick a side when 99% of people are in the middle. Obviously, we all think, there should be more. If a woman wants to go into game development, she should be able to do that. But nobody's being violent against them to stop them from doing it. Why is that statement so hard? And it again just comes down to the desperate need for attention and approval.
Yeah, I mean, like, and even is that even a centrist statement? Like, isn't it just like normal people? Like, I think the sides are them, and then like the normal people that are like, yeah, if she's good enough to make games or make art or write a book or cook a souffle, then great, and that should be the end of it. But it's never enough, and that's kind of a strange thing to me,
Yeah, well, yeah. They are almost in a war with merit.
Yes,
they absolutely are, because they have no merit themselves. They know, like, I have desperately wanted that there was the lead writer of Borderlands 3. I thought about honestly challenging him to creating a set of 5 characters, and I'm like, okay, you can go off with your little DEI group, and let's see who can come back and make a more rich world. Let's see who can create more interesting characters after 1 week. You can have your group, and it'll just be me for my side. And I guarantee that their characters would probably fit the exact same mold that the Forspoken character was, and that all these current present day female
they're kind of
characters
weird cookie cutter female boss, because there's like certain they have to have certain traits, and they have to lack other traits, because they can't be flawed, but also they can't be too attractive. They can't be, there's like a bunch of things that they can't be, because that falls into what they call a trope, which of course the word trope has lost all meaning for them, you know. But yeah, I now that you mention it, I was really disappointed in Borderlands 3, to be honest. Like I thought, because like Borderlands 2 was so good, I thought it was gonna like be better than that. And I was like, well, I don't like anybody in this game. You know, they just weren't great written characters. So weird. I didn't know that was written by a DEI guy. Yeah, that's you know what? That's a really good example of what I'm talking about. That brand printed money until that moment. Like that's what they do. Something does really well. Assassin's Creed is a decent example. I like the first two. I didn't play anymore after that. But like the brand becomes massive, and then that's when these people are like, "Oh, I want to write for that," and then they just put their fan fiction in there. That's almost always what it is. It's like, I'm gonna make it diverse by putting me in it.
Boring. How droll. Somebody said to me recently, because and this is like one of my favorite things too. I know that it came from a good place, but someone's like, well, I would play a video game if you were the main character. And I'm like, no, I sit in my basement all day and draw Yaoi and Yuri. You don't want a basement dwelling simulator. You want a crazy character who's gonna go balls to the wall, insane. You want the morals challenged by that character. You want an interesting story. That's what you want. Don't play a game as me. That's boring.
Well, yeah. You could probably make that entertaining, honestly.
You could, but it would
simulator.
It would be a very specific audience. I mean, there's a goat simulator niche, for Christ's sake. But
they could find a niche. If it was good, if it was well written, I'm sure it could find a niche. You know.
See, I don't actually have a problem with any of that. Like I don't care if you make a weird
dating. All the options are like basement dwellers. You know.
Yeah, I don't care if you make that. My main problem is that, like, I don't care if people make that. You can make whatever lame, simulator you want to make, whatever game you want to make. Well, I mean, it's I think it's supposed to be lame. It's in the title. But like, but the thing is, what I don't want is for you to give me your basement dweller dating simulator and call it Devil May Cry 6. That's what I don't want, because that's what they do. You know what I mean? Like, don't call it the new Resident Evil 9 dating basement dating simulator with like fat ass Chris Redfield, who is black now, by the way. Yeah, I mean, like, no, like that's what because that's what it is. That's the main. Yep. That's the important difference is nobody. And this is the thing that, like, in that debate had to be brought up multiple times. Nobody is saying that people can't make whatever they want. But number one, you can't force it on us, because this is what happened back in Gamergate 1 when the reviewers were like, you gotta play Depression Quest. It's only $10. You gotta play it. Nobody wanted to play that shit. Like, and nobody wanted to play it. Like, some people play Gone Home. It's fine that it exists. I don't care. But it's just like, if I'm not into that, it doesn't make me a bad person. And this is the problem. They will tell you, if you don't consume this product, you're a bad person, and we're gonna write about you in this way. And it's like, well, if my response is, well, I'm not going to support your company, that doesn't make me a bad guy, but this is what they're doing, right? Because that's literally what it is, right? I mean, well, there was a game, there was a game that came out that just wasn't good. Like, it wasn't woke or anything, but it just wasn't great, or it disappointed people. I guess Dragon Dogma 2 had microtransactions, and people were like, well, I'm not going to buy that. And then somebody said, oh, so now you're okay with, like, I don't know, there was they thought it was like a gotcha. They were like, oh, well, this game isn't woke. Why don't you like it? And I was like, yeah, but if I choose not to play this game, Capcom's not going to write a billion hit pieces about how I'm a bigot because I don't want to pay for their microtransactions. You see the difference? Like, the important distinction is that some people respect the fact that I own my money and I want to spend my money on what I want to buy. Therefore, I believe in private property, which is what these retards call capitalism. And there are some people like them that think that you should not have a choice in what you spend your money on, and that they should be able to dictate what you pay for and what you enjoy and what you consume. And I disagree with the latter. It's that simple.
The best example, too, was the recent Marvel's movie. So the lead demographic that went to see the movie was white men between the ages of 18 and 35. If if you're trying to say, oh, we made this movie for a certain group of people and those people don't show up, and then you want to put out a rush statement of, oh, well, misogyny and racism is the reason why this wasn't profitable. You just called the demographic you were targeting racist and misogynist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I heard
what the hell?
I heard the proportion of men who went to the Marvels was actually higher, so it wasn't.
Yeah, it was the majority.
But also higher than other Marvel movies. So it wasn't just that it was that women didn't go. They just aren't interested in these female characters.
No, I mean, like, it's not that they don't go to see movies. The Barbie movie made $1 billion, but they just didn't want to see movies in a genre that primarily targeted at men historically.
Have you guys seen the latest Loki series?
No,
I can't.
You can't make yourself, or you just
they butchered Loki from I loved that character, and they castrated him just like they castrated Doctor Strange, just like they've castrated all the other male characters that I have come to love. Like, I grew up with all of these. I grew up with Thor, I grew up with the Silver Surfer, I grew up with Black Panther, and they butchered them, and it broke my heart.
Absolutely. Why do you ask?
Oh, I actually with the writers group that we have through the Discord, our Discord community, we watched the entire Loki series in 3 days.
The second season?
Second and first.
Okay, I only saw the first one.
But we watched it just to like figure out what went wrong, basically. And I will say that it was absolutely terrible. The first season might be more coherent, but thematically it was worse. And you're absolutely right. The first season was cringy. Like, watching Loki heap praise on this gormless styrofoam mannequin that was just there, and also I don't know how they made the woman so unattractive. Like, she's not that unattractive. Like, the actress isn't. The actress isn't that unattractive. We actually confirmed this. So, like, is she supposed to be? No, she wasn't that unattractive. They managed to make her more unattractive in this series.
Well, you don't want to outshine a woman that might watch it. I mean, they might feel bad about themselves.
Well, women don't watch this stuff. This is what
I know, but that's what they're. No, of course not.
That's the logic. Yeah, I get it. They don't actually ask women what they want.
Thing is, too, with the Loki show, like, the thing is that it only has the name of the character. Nothing in that has any resemblance to the comics.
Something interesting at all. I actually watched the whole thing, so something interesting happened. The first season was absolutely terrible for this. All Loki seemed to do was just heap praise on this wooden, I don't know what to call her, like, just afterthought. And but the second season, the first 4 episodes, utterly forgettable. I don't know how people, like, how this writing gets past any kind of quality control, because it's nothing. None of the characters are consistent scene to scene. But then the last 2 episodes, it's almost like somebody was like, yeah, well, we better make a story. And they just handed the reins back to Loki, and it was not that bad. Like, as soon as every other character sort of faded into the background, and the female Loki just played her role as an obstacle that Loki had to overcome, basically. I mean, because she refused to change her mind on something, because that's another thing that apparently strong, independent women never do, is change their minds. And he had to accommodate that, which led to his grand sacrifice. But the whole part, like the last 2 episodes, were actually watchable. I'm like, what the hell? And it was because they returned to Loki. And Loki was, again, the main character, solving the problems. And I just find it fascinating that they still fail. Like, they're trying so hard to make female Loki compelling and interesting. And the story sucks until they just go back to.
Yeah, they've made it. It's all. The thing is, like, the female Loki, there really isn't any need to refer to her even in that name, because every female character they have written for the past decade is the same character.
Yes.
Like, there's no difference between her and like the Marvels and the woman from whatever, like, but you know, the Ant-Man's daughter, like all those girls, even the ones the doctor, whatever her name was, Jodie Whittaker, like all of them are basically the same person because that's the safest. It's the safest place, right? All those female characters in Star Wars.
There's actually a reason for that.
Yeah, I want to hear that. Let's hear it.
So, all these people grew up writing really shitty self-insert fan fiction back in the 2000s. And so if you go and read the bad fan fiction written by women, the way that they write men is they are writing them as if they are a woman, but just with a man's name, right? So they make them more emotional, they make them more sensitive, they make them more vulnerable, they make them more clumsy. And then for their female inserts, they are the problem solvers in the story. They don't know how to essentially be a dungeon master. They don't know how to craft elements for a character to figure out. So their character comes in and they're the motivator. They're the reason why things are good. They're the one who present the solution. They're the one who goes and does the brave thing. They save the vulnerable male protagonist. And so all of that somehow managed to get into Hollywood under the guise of diversity and inclusion.
Yes, it is. I knew it was the fan fiction. It's basically all the people who left Tumblr went to Hollywood and they went to game development.
Somehow snuck in there. They just sort of instead of doing
the chick who wrote She-Hulk, she admits that she had to get her so she has one of the best agents in Hollywood that she was able to pay money for somehow. I guess she sunk all her money into this, and she got her script in front of Feige 3 times, and on the 3rd time he finally said okay. And that is so fucking embarrassing. And it's demoralizing.
Let me ask you something else. First of all, as an artist yourself, how do you feel about the fact that these women continue to get like massively high profile positions and somehow continue to fail upwards? Like, or at least like horizontally. Like, for example, the show Velma, which was probably one of the worst shows I've ever seen, is getting a 2nd season. So they're gonna Okay, so as somebody who is a creative person yourself, how does what do you
as a person of woman
of craft? No, a woman, yeah, but also somebody who creates. I mean, like as a you know, like men who want to make stuff, they will. I think a lot of them are just like, I know I'm not gonna get it. I mean, like Luke, I mentioned him already. He's a pro. Like he's one of the best I've ever seen in terms of like people that I know personally. And he can't get work. He's driving an Uber. So like men are just out. I think that what happened is a lot of these women, how do they get these positions? I think they join unions and these various like groups that are essentially lobby the companies to be like, you need to get more women because you don't have enough women. And so these companies have to hire women. Otherwise they're going to get not just bad scores, but they're going to get bad PR, maybe lose money, whatever. So they do it. And none of these women are good at what they do. So like as somebody who is good at what they do and somebody who does care about merit, how do you feel about that?
So it's really tragic. Unfortunately, the people who are generally decent at the things that they do and genuinely good and genuinely have a passion also exhibit a normal amount of shame. Back in my 20s, I actually turned down my dream job 3 times. Twice because I wasn't ready, and then the 3rd time was because by that point I got told, we can get you the job because you're a woman. No one wants to hear that if you're good at what you do. And so I made sure I positioned myself in a way where I could take care of myself and maybe one day start a studio of my own. But what they do is, and it's exactly what you said, people will prey on these shameless type. And they position themselves in a way to get the tax breaks and to get the ESG funding. And then they'll go to the company and then they'll bully them and say, hey, I've got this person, you know, they check off these boxes and you need to hire them. Otherwise, you're not going to get funding from Vanguard or BlackRock, or you're not going to get this from whoever. And so, unfortunately, we are just at a point where creativity is, at least in the AAA sense and at the highest levels with Hollywood, is all based off of the funding that they receive, because it's all spreadsheets. Committees are making stories, not creative people.
Yeah, that's how you get a dog. How you get a talking dog in Schindler's List.
Oh boy, yeah.
It's also in publishing, like writing, novel publishing.
Awful. It is so bad. The first time I came across that actually was back when I was looking at publishing, and back in 2014 or 2015, I found out that you have to submit your work through a sensitivity reader, and I was like, what in the fuck is that?
Oh, we covered those. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I thought, so if I write a blacksmithing character, they're going to tell me, hey, you did this wrong. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. No, if you use the word fat, you got to change it. And I sat there and I was like, what? Why is the word fat a problem? What if I write a period piece and there's a racist character? No, you can't do that. That's not safe. And I was like, what? But it's a period piece.
Yep.
Like, how does that even work?
It's just more make work, because there was so I got some horror stories from the writing industry. There was a woman recently who published, I don't know, maybe it was her second novel, maybe it was a debut novel, I'm not quite sure, but she was a teacher and she was publishing like a memoir of her teaching, and she had been, I believe, teaching underprivileged youth in the UK, and one of the kids that she taught, and she taught like minority kids, one of the kids that she taught described themselves as having chocolate skin, and she included it in the book. The book was okayed by a sensitivity reader, but that didn't matter. Once it got out into the greater world, the usual suspects found that and tore her to shreds over being a racist. And I'm like looking at this and I'm like, the publishing industry and the whole community around writing is no longer about the beauty of the art or the merit of the art. It's about finding minor flaws and crucifying people for them. You know?
Well, and they weren't taught to read, because the art of subtext and the art of descriptors is gone. They have to be handheld, and they have to say, okay, this character is black, this character is gay, this character is feeling this today. I just accidentally wrote
That's like a Dr. Seuss.
Yeah, I was about to say, we need to start some art on that. Make it into a kid's
t-shirt. But yeah, so it's so disgusting to me, because I love subtext, I love descriptors, I love ridiculous analogies that maybe don't make sense at first until you give it a deeper thought. And like I liken this to, if the philosophers of yesteryear were around today, they would be absolutely stoned in public by these people, because no one could handle their thought process. And it's so sad.
Well, because everybody would be looking for the minor thing to crucify them about, and that would be the point. It's almost like it's not a publishing industry anymore. It's a crucifixion industry. Oh yeah, who's going to go out on the stage to be picked apart so we can find the one thing, and then we can get our jollies off chasing you out, tar and feathering you, chasing you out of town. Like, who wants to take part in that? But the other thing that I wanted to mention about the publishing industry is there was recently a writer's strike, not a writer's strike, editor's strike. So the general staff in a publishing house, and I do not remember exactly the publishing house. Like I said, I'm terrible with names. But what ended up happening is the publishing house settled with the strikers and ended up firing. Well, what they wanted is they wanted more money for their DEI efforts. Or DEI efforts, and so they wanted to pay.
Didn't earn it.
Yeah, they wanted a pay raise for being sensitivity readers for their sensitivity work. So apparently they got the pay raise. So whoever was doing the sensitivity work got more money, but then the printing house, the publishing house, fired a bunch of people in order to pay the sensitivity readers more. Is what I'm getting, as otherwise they would have kept them, right? So they raised the pay for the sensitivity readers and probably fired a bunch of people who were doing actual work. So it's just going to get like the quality that's coming out of publishing houses is also going to get worse in this war on merit. But yeah, that's what's happening in publishing. I'm sure it's even worse than that.
They're even doing it to classics, aren't they? They're going through like Roald Dahl, Ian Fleming, like lots of older books. In before they do it to Harry Potter, by the way, because
they can't. They can't. She has such a tight hold on her work. Nobody can. Yeah, like J.K. Rowling. I have loved her. So I never got into Harry Potter. I thought that I tried to read it and I thought that it was too shallow for me, just because there wasn't enough abstract thought. Like I like really, really weird styles of writing whenever I read it. But
do you?
Yeah. So she is one of my biggest inspirations because of the hold that she has on her work. And that if I ever made it as a writer, I wanted to be that. I wanted the final say on every single thing, because we saw what happened to George R.R. Martin with Game of Thrones. We saw what happened with how that ended in that final season and all of that. And some of the things that he said about and then we have that with Rings of Power.
I mean, as soon as Christopher Tolkien passed away, the rest of his family, they sold his stuff to the white slavers, as George Lucas calls it.
Yeah. So holding on to your creative voice is all that matters.
That's quite the statement by George Lucas.
Well, he was being sarcastic, but when he sold the Star Wars when he sold Lucasfilm to Disney, he said, "Well, I'm those are my kids, but I'm selling them to the white slavers." So there was a lament in that. And yes, rightfully so, since yeah, I know. And yet, and this is the thing, George Lucas still defends them. He's like, "Oh no, I stand by what they did." Now, granted, there could have been a gun to his head, I don't know. But there is something, and I mean, we should wrap it up because we've gone for an hour and a half, a little bit more. But there is something in the heart and mind of people who, despite them seeing their legacies destroyed by these people who hate what they hate the audience, they hate the product, they just want to eat it from the inside out, and yet they still stand there and they say, no, this is okay, I have to let it go, or whatever, and they even stand by them and defend them. There's something about the minds of those people. Like I got into a little bit of a thing with David Jaffe. David Jaffe is the guy who created God of War.
Oh no.
And
he won't answer my questions.
yeah, he's been he won't respond to me either. But I called him out on something. Let me just bring it up on my Twitter here. I gotta like put it on the screen. Because he made a comment about Stellar Blade. Because
talking about it.
Yeah, he keeps talking about it. And I'm afraid I'm not seeing it, but he basically said something to the effect of, Sony is, I don't know, he was defending stuff, he's caping for Sony. I can't find it, whatever. Because they're the ones, the Stellar Blade game is an exclusive on their console. And I said, trying to find the response. Because I'd rather just, it was today, yeah, but like, some of the stuff gets buried, it just take me a moment. Oh, here it is.
Twitter is incredibly difficult to navigate.
Yeah, I know. I think it needs to be changed in a few ways. But here, let me put it. Let me share it with the audience here. I just
sent it to you on Discord.
Oh, I got it. Thank you, though. One. Yeah, he said, "Oh no, Sony is going to lose their investments because they will have their DEI/ESG privileges revoked from BlackRock." Oh, they won't? You mean it was never proven Sony got investments for DEI scores? But Gamergate 2, you guys. So thought this was like an own, I guess. But it's like that game is going to make money, okay? But just because you couldn't find a direct link between Stellar Blade and DEI doesn't mean that everything else isn't getting ruined. In fact, I think that there was a strong a strong push to remove it. And I said, but you know this woke ESG nonsense is what killed your legacy, right? Like his God of War games. You know this ideology eats and rots everything it touches, right? You know these people hate you for existing, right? And then I said, I think the primary mistake people like Jaffe make, because I've spoken to him a couple of times. I've had him on the show a few years ago, back in Gamergate 1, so it was more than a few years ago, about 10 years ago. And I tried to warn him. I said, you know, at the time, I think God of War, the first remake game was coming out. And I was like, well, I don't know how they're going to treat your property, but you might want to be careful because Kratos had been criticized in a similar way that Mortal Kombat was for being too, you know, toxically masculine, violent, misogynistic, because I don't know if you know, but God of War has all these scenes where you can, like, you know, kill women and innocent people, and there's one bit in God of War 3 where you can have sex with, like, Aphrodite. It's very, like, appropriate for Greek stuff, and I know why Jaffe he was into that. He indulged in that kind of stuff because he's kind of like a big kid, and this is kind of like his, you know, high school, like, I don't know, fantasy or whatever, to like have these kind of ultra violent games that allow you to release like some, you know, I don't know, just to blow off steam. Like that's what it is, right? And I said, yeah, but they're not going to see it that way. And I told him, and he basically said, well, I don't know, it sounds to me like you're really sexist. So I said, I think the primary mistake, and I say this with sympathy, that people like Jaffe make is they think that what they support is something benign. Like, oh, I just care about diversity. Like, this is an argument people make. Well, don't you like diversity in games? Don't you? I like diversity in games. Like, what's wrong with that? You know? Yeah, don't you hate, like, people who hate women? Are you a bigot? Like this, and that's what it always boils down to. I am a moral person, and for some reason in my mind, being a moral person is not the default for everybody. It's like some special thing. Like I'm on another plane of morality because I see women as human. And it's like, well, no, I'm serious though. That's what it is.
You see, would you like a lollipop for that?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I said, you think that just like saying, oh, I care about diversity and stuff is somehow just automatically good or benign. I said it's not. You're not fighting against bigots because the mindset is that like people who oppose this thing must be bigots. So I have to fight bigots. Like why do people walk around with shirts to this day that say punch a Nazi still when there are no Nazis around? Because they think that wearing the shirt is like a message, like I'm a good person, look at me. It's the one good man that we always talk about on our shows, right? It's the same mentality. It's this like, what, do you hate women? I don't hate women. Like most people don't hate women.
Why is it that people think it's moral to put themselves in judgment of others and ignore the fact that most people are moral? I think is what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Because that's how you assume that position of judgment, is by assuming that everybody else is immoral.
Yes, exactly. Yes, you're putting yourself, you're casting yourself as the moral agent, and everyone else is not.
High ground.
I would like to ask him why it was okay for him to include nipples in his game, but it's not okay for Eve to exist.
You mean female nipples?
Yes, well, he's got lady nipples in God of War.
Absolutely, he does. Yeah.
So
but again,
why is he throwing a hissy fit here? And it's very disingenuous because
it is.
But are coming from a wrong place. You know, he's trying to say, oh, the internet's freaking out about Eve existing, about these guys have never seen a woman before, and the point is going over his head because the women from large budget studios are being again castrated. You don't see Eve in other games. You don't see, you know, if Samus was made today, they like to say this. If Metroid came out today, you'd be calling it woke. No, because you would put her in a nun outfit, basically.
Yeah,
you would want her covered. She wouldn't be as beautiful as she is. You can't.
She'd be wearing a hijab.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
Claim ownership of that because she is what you're trying to delete. She has hips, she has curves, she has breasts, she is a white woman with blue eyes and blonde hair. You would not allow that to exist as a main character.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, he's refuting the wrong point. So, like, he's basically saying what he's really doing is caping for Sony. That's what he's doing. He's saying, oh, Sony's not doing the DSG thing. Look at this. And it's like, you're missing the point. Like, this is the exception. You know? And who knows?
The waters.
Like, yeah, they're probably checking to see, like, what's going to be the bigger bang for the buck.
Mm-hmm.
So, but, sorry.
So actually, no, I got a question. Well, I wanted to actually see what kind of stuff do you write, out of curiosity.
So I've done ghostwriting and product writing for people as well, but for my own personal work, I enjoy world building. I have a fantasy-based world with magic. I have science-based worlds that's kind of like a cross between Doom and Final Fantasy, just in terms of technology levels. And the other one that I've got that I'm working on now, my first book that I plan on publishing is going to be part of a sci-fi series. After what happened with the last Star Wars, I was so frustrated and I said, I can make a better world than this.
Ah, yes. Hate is motivation. I know it well.
It is, because like I used to love writing. I know it's kind of like frowned upon to like talk about it as if it's normal, but like I was a big fan fiction writer because I enjoy putting characters through different scenarios and trying to come up with the best possible way that character and their personality would respond to something else. That is the most fun for me. So after they completely butchered the concept of Kylo Ren, I said, I can do that, but better. So
I bet you can. I bet you can.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'm hoping to get the first book done by the end of the year.
You shouldn't. I've also done fanfic too. So I've also written fanfics and I am not in no position to judge, but so where are you at in the publishing pipeline? Are you getting close to having a novel ready, or?
Oh God, no.
No. Okay.
I'm such an so this comes back to how I was in my 20s. So the way that I was raised was basically, my parents were not overly supportive of the idea of me going into making video games or being an artist as a career because, like any good dad, he's like, okay, you need to go to college and get a good degree so that way you have a well-paying job. Then and do whatever you want. But they would always tell me, well, that's for the professionals. So one of the reasons why I kept turning down jobs in my 20s is because I kept feeling like I wasn't ready. So I am so incredibly hard on myself and I will rewrite something 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And I'm learning how to stop doing that. And so I actually published a small kids book under a pen name, and I don't advertise it at all, but it was my first real step into being able to let go. So this will be the second step, because the sci-fi story that the spacey sci-fi story that I'm working on is more of an experiment, and it is still very precious to me, but it's not some of my other characters that I've been drawing since I was 8 and 10 years old. There's one character I just posted recently. I draw her constantly, but she's one of my most cherished characters, and I've been drawing her since I was 13. So, those worlds need a lot more building up. There's, I have over 1,000 named characters between everything that I've worked on. So
yeah, I've got a lot of characters too. And I create stuff for like whenever I made a mascot for this channel, Badger Chan, and that was like an easy one. But like I'm with you on that. I like to make characters and I think I go ahead, Allison.
Are these like drawn characters, or are they just constructed in novel or like in written fiction, or?
I have them. There's a lot of them that I do draw. There's I have basic character sheets for some of them. Most of them are written with loads of backstory, even if they only show up for, 1 or 2 pages, just because that's what I genuinely enjoy doing. I'm like, how can I use this character in the future, maybe? But they all start off with a fundamental, a premise or a question or a moral. Like my most cherished character, Sadie, she is my expression of my fear of death and what it means to be human on a philosophical level. So everything about her kind of revolves around that concept, and every choice that she makes takes that question as a way to approach how she solves problems, how she views other people, and all of that.
Oh, okay. So. That's a definitely an interesting way to go about creating characters. I'm also currently trying to finish up a novel that I've been working on for about 2 years. One of my beta readers calls it Alice in Wonderland meets Game of Thrones. So, yeah. But yeah, it's the character the main character. I also started with a question like, what if you believed something that was fundamentally wrong, but you felt like you were saving the world, but what you were doing is actually dooming it. So I wanted to explore that kind of a moral quandary. So it's a little bit similar, I think, to what you were talking about of having taking a character and having a question, and having them embody a question. So it's cool to meet a fellow writer. That's neat.
Yeah. We had the Sad Puppies on before. It was like a while back. So, and what was it? What was his name? Gregory Allen Elliott. Oh wow, I remember that. He got in trouble too. He was an artist. But we should wrap it up. We've gone for about getting on 2 hours now. But Savvy, is there? Yeah, I know it's all right. It's all right. So I want to say that I'd like to have you back on again sometime to talk more about art stuff, because I think that like when we talk about like how sad it is that people without talent that just want to exploit essentially systems or tools that may have been put in place with good intentions to help people like get a leg up. It's kind of sad, but maybe we as individuals can try to build something. I mean, that's what Comicsgate did. And I think that more of this stuff is starting to happen. I support indie game developers, for example, and I get help from people that are sort of adjacent to that scene. So maybe you come back on and we can talk about other things that you like. And be good. Okay.
Definitely.
All right, awesome. And now I will ask you this. So we've been talking about a lot of negative stuff, but what is a game that you are playing right now that you are really enjoying that's newer? I know that retro games are making a comeback, which is cool. I'm down for that. But like, what is a new game that you're enjoying right now? A new film or a recent film that you really liked, and a recent show that you're also really into?
Game is really hard because I have been so busy with commissions, but while it's not necessarily a newer game, they did just announce a DLC. If you don't play RimWorld, you need to, especially for
RimWorld
story making. Oh my gosh, yes. I have thousands of hours in that game. It's so good.
Oh, okay.
It's basically how do you describe it? You control a colony, and their storytelling system is so good. No two games will ever play the same. So it's endless replayability, and the mod community is so beautiful. I usually run about 800 to 900 mods, but the vanilla game itself is still fantastic, and there's so much to learn. You will always laugh and smile, even through the most stressful of moments. A recent movie or show, I don't watch a lot of movies anymore, just because Hollywood is Hollywooding, but Shogun, if you haven't started watching
Shogun is so good. Shogun is so good. Yes, it is.
Good.
What my favorite thing, Allison, if you haven't seen Shogun, it is so good. Like I can't believe it's on Hulu because like Disney owns it. But
it's through
FX. Yeah, through FX. Yeah, it is definitely through FX. And I'm not watching it on either of those platforms. But what my favorite thing about it is how authentic it feels. Like it's one of the most authentic period shows, based on a book that my father owned and read. It was like one of his favorite books. So yeah,
actually read the original book.
Shogun is good. Yeah. So Not the old one, but you can watch the old one too. But this is a new one, produced by Hiroyuki Sanada, who you might know from. He was in a lot of stuff. He was in John Wick 4. He was in The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise. He was on Sunshine. I feel like he was in the Japanese version of The Ring, right? That was like the first thing I saw him in. So yeah, he's in a lot of stuff. It's very good. Shogun is beautiful.
Beautiful art.
Yeah, beautiful.
Oh,
yeah. So anyway, thank you so much, Savvy, for coming on. Do you have any final words or thoughts before we close it out?
Never stop creating, and don't let someone else tell you you can't do something because you can.
All right. Well stated. Beautiful. Thank you so much. I got a super chat from Albert Nada Retro, gives us $5 Canadian, and says Eve is actually based on a real woman named Shin Jae-yoon. So when they knock Eve's appearance, they body shame a real woman. Yeah, but these people don't care about that. They don't care about that. Like
wrong woman to celebrate.
Their language, whenever they use their shaming language, it only goes in one direction because they really don't care about that stuff. They just care about what can emotionally manipulate you to do what they ask. So this is why you have to never apologize. Like the number one thing, never apologize, because it's not about apology. It's not about guilt. It's about control. But anyway, well, thank you so much, Savvy, for coming on. I really appreciate this. I thought it was great having you on and talking to you. And hopefully I'll see you really soon. We'll do this again.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up there. Allison, do you want to do any things, or should I just...
Oh, yeah, sure. If you enjoyed this show and you want to give us a tip because you liked our work, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. We get the full benefits of whatever funds you send, and you get the full benefits of not sending your message through YouTube's comment enhancement system. So once again, that's feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And if you would like to join us during for our patron only content, you can access that at feedthebadger.com/subscribe, where you can set up a subscription and join us in our patron Discord and get access to the after shows where you have tons and tons of more additional content from us. All right, back to you, Brian.
All right, well, if you guys like this video, please smash like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we did on the show today, what we discussed. And please check out Savvy's links in the description. Follow her on her social medias. And, give her a, hire her for something. I don't know. Just, add to her growing queue of commissions. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on today's episode of Badger Pod Gamergate. And we'll see you all in the next video.
Are machines, dude. Okay, they are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.